Welcome back, AI curious folk, to AI Ramblings Daily. Monday, this is episode 78. I'm Michael Parekh, your human AI guide. And today, I want to take a slightly different focus on the things we discuss around AI, which typically have to do with the technology, the financial curves, etc. The theme I want to touch on today is the emotional impact of AI on regular people. Specifically, in the news items that are coming up that I want to discuss, it's employees, it's students, and the impact on families. And we're going to use the epicenter of the AI wave globally, which of course is Silicon Valley and San Francisco, as the geographical coordinates for the three sets of stories I want to touch on. And the reason I want to do this is because these are the emotional impact elements of what's happening. And every technology wave has lots of impact on people, obviously, good, bad, and ugly. And this is all part of the mix. What we are generally concerned about is that if the net impact, after everything is said and done, over time, the impact of the technology wave has productive impact on society. But in the meantime, as it's going through the evolution, it came to an explosion of the technology, there's a lot of rough and tumble, a lot of changes, a lot of impact on humans in every walk of life. And this time it's no different. It's just that it's bigger. And in many cases, the zeros are larger. So let's get into it. The first story I want to highlight is a series of tweets that were put up by Deedy, who's a venture capitalist at Menlo Ventures. And he put up an X post that went viral over the weekend. I'll have all of these links in the show notes as usual for episode 78, so you can take a look at it and read all of it. In fact, all the three stories I want to highlight, I would recommend reading the main stories because you'll get the gist of the emotional impact and the nuance of the stuff from this rather than just the summaries that I'm discussing here. But the Deedy posts were basically about the haves and the have-nots of the AI gold rush. Obviously, he's talking about here about 10,000 people in San Francisco, the ones fortunate enough to be working at an OpenAI or an Anthropic or any one of the Mag 7s are seeing just massive short-term riches in terms of their stock options and so on, and on the order of 20 million or more. And then there's the whole cluster of the rest of technology employees at most of the big tech companies, medium companies, small, who are not as lucky, and they're kind of watching from the outside. So all of this creates all these cross emotions, as you can imagine, and what impact it has on the culture, on dynamics between friends, people. It's an interesting article that will get a lot of fodder. It's been written up by a couple of other publications. I've also added their stories in the links, so you can take a look at this. And so that's one story I wanted to highlight. I'm going to go through each one of them, and then I'll give you my take at the end of it. The second is the impact of AI on Stanford students. And there was a student who took the time and he got this write-up, essentially an op-ed piece in the New York Times. Very well done, long piece. Again, recommend you read the whole thing. But he started at Stanford in his undergrad class, I think about a month or two after ChatGPT. So his experience as they're coming on to their graduation, their fourth year, is he's talking about just all of the experience. I mean, this is the first generation that grew up with ChatGPT full on. And he does a very good job explaining how it's made it so much tougher to not, quote, cheat in any class because of the pressures and realities of what's going on, the imperative to learn the technologies so that they can just compete and just do the work that they need to do. Just the very visceral kind of in the foxhole experience of these kids who are just being inundated with the changes, very raw. And because they're at Stanford, they're actually seeing all the big companies and the VCs, roaming the halls, doing presentations. So they're seeing literally firsthand the fortunes that can be created. He specifically talks about watching the kids who built Perplexity in the first year when he started, become billionaires by year 3. The last valuation on Perplexity is over 20 billion. I've written about them in a number of posts. And so it's an interesting article that, again, there are no easy answers. He talks a lot about the pressures, the impact on how they study, and how they learn actually with these tools, how the school has to figure out that they're monitored, graded, ranked, and reputationally judged. So all of these things are big questions. And what is going on here at Stanford is obviously going on at countless colleges and universities around the world. So this is just an ecosystem example of what's going on here. The third article was in Wired, again, a very long, detailed piece, and it's titled Meet the Sad Wives of AI. And basically, it's talking about the family impact of AI, both in the families that have the overnight success with millions of dollars, or the other, and the ones that don't. But even in either one of them, the issue of the spouses who are in the AI business, the mental pressures on them in terms of needing to work super hard, try and succeed, the issues of being behind relative to peers and competitors, the pressure on the relationships, all of these kinds of things. Again, all of this is interesting reading in terms of what's going on today. And it takes me, and I would recommend you read all three of these pieces if you can. But here's my overall take, taking a step back, having been the head of internet research at Goldman in the internet age in the 90s and seen this through a lot of tech waves. A lot of the stuff that we're seeing in these articles are emotions that we've seen before. When technology changes happen, they have huge impact on people's lives, obviously. And there's a lot of great stories, anecdotes, etc. Eventually, just like in the previous tech waves, there'll be books and movies written about all of this, and we will adjust society. One of the most interesting things about people is that we're adaptable and adjustable, and these stories are interesting because they're just happening at the beginning of these big technology changes, but everything will normalize hopefully sooner than later. And so that is the core dynamic here that we want to keep in mind. And the other thing I would highlight in terms of my take here is that what's happening in San Francisco is global. In fact, I would venture to say we have similar stories, even more dramatic, in China, which is the second largest AI market. Again, a super hyper competitive people, lots more people involved. I was just reading another piece on how 600 million users in China are already experiencing AI generated super apps, which is something that is just emerging here in the US. So all of these things have massive social impact on people in all walks of life. And this is also happening in the context, and I've written a lot about this as well, at a time when AI versus other tech waves is more feared and somewhat loathed this early in its cycle than most other tech cycles. And part of the reasons, obviously, number one, the founders of these companies basically keep talking about the immense job losses potentially to come. People are worried about their jobs. The students are worried about if they're going to get hired or get opportunities relative to the AIs and the agents that the companies that they want to try and get jobs are employing. So the job fears are one. The second is all the dystopian concerns around AI in terms of doomerism and so on is another element, existential risk. So all of these pressures are all on top of us. And in the meantime, we have to live our daily lives as students, as spouses, as employees of companies, etc. And these are very real issues. And to read these pieces in the context of San Francisco or Silicon Valley, the epicenter of all this, is interesting. It's very raw, very visceral, etc. So I would highlight, take a look at this. But we have seen this movie before, and it's more intense this time. There are more zeros involved on either side of the ledger. And it's definitely a very interesting time that we are all surfing through here. I bring up that metaphor because the waves can get pretty violent and unsettling. So now let's go to the Gadget AI section of today's episode. And what I want to talk about here is Amazon Alexa Plus, which is this Siri of Amazon. And you're going to see similar things from Siri when Apple has its developer conference coming up next month. But Amazon with Alexa Plus, which is their subscription.
Do you want me to use ChatGPT to answer that?
No. See, this
No
is what I'm
problem.
talking
I
about. These things respond when you're not talking to them. And what I'm trying to talk here about is the Amazon rolling out this Alexa Plus, which is offering a new feature, an AI-generated podcast capability. So it's the same kind of personalized two-host conversational summary that Google made popular in something called Notebook LM last year. But Alexa is basically productizing this across hundreds of millions of Echo devices, and it makes it a meaningful distribution moment for AI-generated content, audio content. And they have also are cutting deals with news outlets and publishers that will productize this at a more mainstream scale level. So I'm interested in it. I'll try it out, and I'll come back with it as well. But I want to bring it up because, again, one of my famous favorite authors is Marshall McLuhan, and he's famous for having said, the medium is the message. And technology changes the medium constantly, radio to television. And obviously, in the last few years, we've had social media change how we interact with each other. 3.5 billion people at Meta, all the pluses and minuses of that interaction. TikTok in the context of the whole doom scrolling thing. And now we are seeing AI create content out of traditional media that is artificial and different form. Much of it will be called AI slop, which is the big term that has been used. I've written a lot about AI slop. You can search for that on AI-RTZ. But this is an important new product that I wanted to just highlight, just because it's a mainstream distribution type of possibility here through Amazon's reach. And so I wanted to highlight that in the AI gadget section, which brings us to our questions of the day from listeners and readers. One question was, again, related to the item I just discussed. What AI generated content am I using more than not? And I would say both on my X or Twitter feeds and TikTok feeds, the subjects of interest that I'm involved in, I'm finding increasingly useful AI-generated posts, longer, detailed, lot of links, etc. Or on the TikTok side, short video clips or textual clips, etc. that are created by AI, but they're useful. They've done a lot of the background research and presented them in the form of that medium, as it were. In TikTok, it's in 30, 40 seconds, especially some of the science content. I'm a nut on astrophysics and space and that sort of thing. So there's a lot of content that comes out there that I end up spending a lot more time than I would like, but it's all reasonably good AI slop. On the negative side, the question I've gotten is, what are the negatives that I'm seeing from this side? And what I wanted to just obviously underline there is AI slop that is very commercial. One of the things that this technology does is allow people to create a lot of content that can generate a lot of views, engagement, etc. And it's pretty automated. And we're seeing a ton of stuff in our FYP For You page feeds that are obviously just doom scrolling media, just engineered specifically to generate and keep our attention and then get monetized on those systems. So it's engagement-based layer kind of stuff. And that is negatives. You learn how to kind of weed through that and around it, the synthetic piece of this. But there are babies in the bathwater. So it's important to kind of keep that in mind in terms of this whole AI slop thing. So that is my show, AI Ramblings Daily today. I hope you found that interesting. As usual, questions, comments, likes, subscribes, always welcome. I also want to highlight my post from today, AI-RTZ 1090, which talks about OpenAI's rolling internal code reds, and they're doing a lot of interesting things to get ready for their IPO against Anthropic later this year. As you know, SpaceX is going to be, looks like they're shooting for June 12th for their IPO. So there'll be a lot of SpaceX related news over the next few days. We'll have that in coming shows. So thank you for joining us. Tomorrow, of course, we will have ARD 79 and AI-RTZ 1091. Thanks for tuning in, AI curious folk. Stay tuned.